Olá, pessoal, estamos ao vivo. Muito obrigada pela presença de todos. Estamos com mais uma semana de Data Engineers Conference. Todo mundo sabe aí, bastante conteúdo de Microsoft, Databricks, muita coisa de Fabric, de inteligência artificial, engenharia de dados, banco de dados, SQL Server 2025. Tem uma semana inteira de hoje até sexta-feira com muito conteúdo, pessoal. Vamos chegando, vamos escrevendo no chat aqui. Quem está chegando, vamos dar boa noite aqui. Já estão com um convidado especial aqui aguardando, tá? Eu vou fazer a introdução dele em português para vocês, primeiramente. Depois eu faço a apresentação dele em inglês. E aí ele vai fazer a apresentação toda em inglês. Vou colocar as legendas aqui para vocês acompanharem, tá bom? Lembrando, pessoal, nosso canal do YouTube, Data Engineers Conference, para vocês assistirem as palestras anteriores. Hoje a gente está com a 8ª edição desse evento, vem crescendo bastante, o pessoal está gostando muito. Fico muito feliz com os retornos da galera aí, tentando criar os ambientes, fazer o hands-on que a gente tem feito no evento. Por favor, tragam aí as perguntas. E a gente está aqui com o senhor Bob Ward, principal arquiteto da Microsoft, tem trabalhado na Microsoft aí há mais de 30 anos. Tem uma honra muito especial dele estar aqui com a gente, ele é um monstro do SQL Server. E o Bob vai falar para a gente sobre a parte do Enterprise, né? Sobre como construir todo um ambiente de SQL Server dentro do Enterprise. Legal, pessoal? Então, a palestra de hoje com o Bob Ward, ele vai falar com o tema SQL Server de AI Ready Enterprise Database. Ou seja, você vai ficar pronto para consumir inteligência artificial, para utilizar os serviços híbridos do SQL 2025, né, da melhor forma possível, com o monstro do SQL Server com vocês, tá bom? Por favor, vão dando boa noite, escrevam no chat, me acompanhem aqui, que ele está aqui já aguardando a gente, eu vou apresentar ele para vocês, tá bom? Vamos lá, galera. Hi, Bobby, how are you?
Hello, Carol, how are you?
Thanks, fine. The people will waiting for this moment. Thank you. Thank you for joining us with the Data Engineers Conference. I'm honored to have you in our channel, in my company here. As a SQL Server fan, I'm very happy to share this stage with you. And I say this on behalf of the technical community. I will here in backstage analyzing the chat, the question. And guys, I will save your question for the last, but if the Bobby interrupt, you can change it, come back here with the answers and question. Okay? Thank you very much, Bobby. I'm gonna share your screen. I'm here in backstage. The stage is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Carol. Thank you, everybody, all listening and watching and here live. What an honor to be here. Carol is a rock star in the industry. She's just a known expert. And she reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, would you be interested in coming to speak at our event on SQL Server 2025? And I was honored. I'm like, of course I would. I wish I could be there with you in Brazil. I've never been to Brazil before, so it'd be probably a great fun trip for me at some point to come to your country. So thanks again so much for joining. It's so hard to find time to learn when you're trying to do your job. So I really appreciate you taking the time today. You know, it'll be 32 years in about 1 month that I joined Microsoft in 1993, all working on SQL Server, all the way back to diskettes and OS/2. So it's amazing for me to get to present to you the latest version of SQL Server 2025. A couple of logistics for you. As Carol mentioned, I'm a principal architect at Microsoft. I work within the engineering team itself, even though I'm based here. I'm here at my home in North Richland Hills, Texas. But I work with the engineering team and been actively involved in the planning and design. It's such a great honor to finally see SQL Server 2025 come to life. So right on your screen, you see this link here, aka.ms SQL Server 2025 Decks. The presentation that you're seeing right now is available for you online to download right now. In fact, we only have an hour, so I'll only do a subset of what's in that deck. A lot of rich information there for you, including demonstrations that I'll show you that you can see in the deck itself. There are other presentations on this site as well. I'm an open source presenter. You can use this deck to whatever purpose you need. Share that with your friends, colleagues, present it even yourself. So let's get started with our journey. So I always start today talking about this phrase because you're going to find out, based on its title of this talk, for SQL Server 2025, AI is a very important part of our feature. But AI is only as good as the data that you feed it. Maybe you've seen this already yourself. AI technology is amazing, but if you don't have the right data, it's really not something that can be very useful for you. And I think we're going to show you with an interesting, secure way with SQL Server to use AI in probably ways you haven't thought of before. Here's the announcement we made in May at the Build Conference. I was part of that announcement in Seattle, Washington for the public preview of SQL Server 2025. And look in the middle there, that theme. It relates to our talk. We are an AI-ready database for AI technology, but we're enterprise. We want to make sure you understand because people trust SQL Server 2025 for enterprise functionality. So we believe we're both ready for AI applications, but to give you the security, performance, and availability that you trust with us for so many years to power AI applications. And we're going to talk about some of the other themes you see here below. For example, SQL Server 2025, I believe, is the most impressive release for developers in a decade. We'll talk about that today. Now, I've been presenting on SQL Server for many years for Microsoft when new releases come out. And every time I do it, I forget to mention all the goodness that comes with SQL Server from previous releases. You can see on the screen right here that if you're on SQL 16 today, you may not be aware of all these features. So in SQL 17, 19, and 2022, if you upgrade to SQL 25, you get all of this functionality as part of the release. We're only going to focus on what's new for SQL 25, but don't forget and look back at what we've done in the latest releases because you're going to get all that goodness when you upgrade to this latest version. Now, I get a lot of questions about SQL Server 2025, and let's talk about some of them you see on this screen. The first one is, when is this going to be generally available? You're in public preview already. Well, I have this kind of funny phrase in America I use, we won't miss the name. We put the name of a year in SQL Server on purpose because we're trying to signal to you that we will have this available. So before the end of this year, you will see SQL Server 2025 become general available. Go look at big events on the calendar for Microsoft. We're pretty famous for making big splash announcements at big events. Things like licensing and pricing, those kind of type things, those will be announced in when we go general available, although I have one interesting pivot on additions that I'll talk to you about today. And upgrade methods are the same as in the past. The same type of process to set up SQL Server and upgrade them. And any kind of discontinued features or deprecations will be announced at general available. Although we have one significant one that you can see here on this slide, and that is that if you're a reporting services user, you will now get Power BI Report Server as your preferred way now on premises to use reporting. And any paid license will have access to that software. Reporting services will no longer be part of the SQL 25 licensing model, but Power BI Report Server will be. We also have this new option called preview features. So some of the features you'll see today, when we become general available, will be in what we call preview mode. It's kind of like having Azure SQL Cloud preview features, but in SQL Server. That way you don't have to wait till the next major release to get these features. And we'll call out some of those in today's presentation. So anytime I also talk about SQL Server, Fabric, Azure SQL, any of our products, I remind our audience that SQL is an amazing story, ground to cloud to Fabric. What an amazing journey from diskettes to this, whether it's on premises with Linux, Kubernetes, containers, Windows Server, whether it's in the cloud with databases or managed instance or virtual machine, or our new SQL database in Fabric, you still have a common thread. The same T-SQL language, the same database engine. Did you know that the main source code for SQL Server that we build is the same for everything? It's the same source code branch. We just kind of light up features in different ways in different places where it makes sense. It's our intention to make sure our tools like Management Studio connect with anything consistently. And we want to make sure that any data where SQL Server exists can show up in Fabric through a concept called mirroring. We'll talk a little bit about how SQL 25 plays in that today. And then any type of AI application, whether it's building a RAG pattern or a prompt system or a new agent, we want to make sure SQL can be a great source for you. But in addition, we want to make sure our AI capabilities that are built into the engine are consistent across all of these services. And then we have Copilot experiences, whether it be in Management Studio, in the Fabric editor, in the Azure portal itself, a consistent set of Copilot experiences for you to help you generate queries or use SQL services. So we believe that SQL Ground to Fabric is a great story for our customers because you can deploy once and you can develop once and deploy anywhere wherever SQL exists. Okay, let's talk about SQL 25 from a visual perspective. Like, what's new? I call this my camera slide because when I presented this before, people want to take a photo of it. So you have the deck, so you don't need to go do that. If you look at the top here from left to right, I call these the areas of innovation. Whether it's AI built in, which we're going to talk about a little bit in a second, what that means, great developer features, or being integrated with the fabric. This is like brand new stuff that's not part of a normal relational database. And then in the middle are engine topics, security, performance, and availability. And you may have seen us talk a lot about AI that comes with SQL 25, but we have a lot of great engine features, and we'll talk about some of those today. And they're built on a foundation, whether it's connected with Arc for hybrid services, using SSMS. We just announced today a new version of SSMS, SSMS 22, that's available for you as well. Benchmarks, we'll do benchmarks when we go publicly available. We have some interesting options for you when we come generally available to talk about how we're optimized for the latest hardware. And then don't forget, we can run on Linux, containers, Kubernetes, Windows Server, Azure, wherever you need it. SQL Server is there for you to deploy many different ways. So let's kind of unpack some of these different things you see in this slide and kind of talk more deeper about them. So AI built in, like what do we mean by that? AI is such a general term today. So if you look at this area here in these icons, I'll explain how we're interacting with today's AI models. Specifically, with AI built in, we're trying to solve these problems, and that is smarter searching with a vector search. We've had customers see this vector search technology and actually made decisions to bring in text information, unstructured and structured, into SQL Server now to take advantage of centralized vector searching. We are not trying to build an AI system. We just want to provide building blocks for AI apps. Whether you're building an agent, a RAG pattern, some prompt app, even just searching smarter with data AI models, we want to provide a building block for you. So we're not going to host AI models. You'll see the architecture of exactly how we're interacting with AI in a secure and scalable fashion. People love the T-SQL language, so why not provide that interface? So all the things you're going to see today involving AI involve a T-SQL interface to make that happen. And in a demonstration I'm going to show you, you'll see exactly what I mean by that. So those are the kind of problems we're trying to solve with our AI built-in technology. What do the features look like? First of all, we're now a vector store. So we have a native vector type to store this concept called embeddings, which are numbers that are semantic meanings of text, including a vector index on top of that. You can now declare AI models for embeddings inside the T-SQL engine in a very secure and isolated way. And those models can be totally on premises or in the cloud. We have the ability to generate embeddings to store in this vector type built into the T-SQL language, or even chunk text data if you're too large to send to these models. And then we provide searching capabilities, whether that be vector distance for like a precise search or approximate searchings with a vector index using a vector search, both of those using T-SQL. I love visualizations. I'm an architect. I need to build architecture diagrams. So here's a great way to explain to you step by step and of the architecture of how vector works with SQL 25. Inside the blue box is the SQL engine, the process space, your database, etc. Keep that in mind. That is your security boundary you know and love. Think of the black box as being like the virtual machine or computer where you're hosting SQL Server. So first of all, you're going to declare a model definition, not load an AI model in SQL Server, but you tell us which model and where it exists. And this is where it gets kind of crazy. Models can exist in all these places. You can host them locally using a REST interface between SQL and the AI models hosted on your computer using something like Ollama. Or we'd have a new option where you can load models using the Onyx runtime, again, loaded outside of SQL Server, but now it's going to use our extensibility framework. Outside of your VM, you could be using a network-based like Ollama or other options. That's all REST. Or you could use a cloud provider. And so we believe we provided the most popular types of AI model interfaces for you. Could be Azure OpenAI, could be OpenAI, or OpenAI compatible models. It could be Ollama itself or even Onyx runtime. So you're going to be declaring to us the model definition, and then you will then take your data, send it to one of these models using T-SQL, generate embedding numbers, and store them in a vector type. Now inside your database, you have embedding numbers that represent the semantic meaning of your data. Optionally, then you could create a vector index on top of the vector type. Well, now what do you do with this thing? Well, one possibility is you build a stored procedure in SQL Server. You take a prompt in, like a natural language phrase, to your stored procedure. You will generate an embedding for the prompt using the same model. Now you have two embeddings, one for your prompt, one for the data. You will then use a vector search to find the most similar results for that data. And the most beautiful part of this story is the prompt can contain words or phrases in multiple languages that are not in your data. That is the power of using semantic meaning embedding models. You can add other filters like where clauses, full text search, any kind of type of thing you normally do with SQL Server. In addition, if none of those model definitions work, your out is use this stored procedure, which you've already offered in the cloud, to connect with any REST point you want. So this is the architecture, but you're probably wondering about security. I don't blame you. Keep in mind this. You control all access with SQL security. You have to put in an SP configure option just to use that diagram. And that's a server admin that has to do that. The access to define models is based on SQL security, and an admin has to set that up as well. And then all the access to SQL, vector searching, data types, all that is all based on the security model you know and love. You control the models. You decide which ones to use, and those models could be on-premises totally or in a cloud provider, and they're isolated from the SQL engine. And then you have other popular security features that you can use in combination with this to make sure what you're providing is a secure way to use AI. And in case you're wondering, hey, I'm going to send my data to a model in the cloud, won't that model learn my data? That's not how models work. You're the application developer at this point using SQL. When you send data to a model has no idea what you just sent it. It sends a response back and it doesn't retain that information. Only AI applications retain information used with models. So let's go look at a demonstration. What I'm going to do here is our company called AdventureWorks needs better searching of their data, and they're going to use AI to make that happen. So let's do this. Let's see what it looks like today. In AdventureWorks, I have a products database for we're AdventureWorks Outdoor Sports as our company. And my goal is to help customers use prompting with an application to do just searching for stuff on their website using natural language. Like, look at this English phrase, show me stuff for extreme outdoor sports. Stuff is a phrase in English that is like things. Extreme could mean a lot of different things, but most people that know outdoor sports know what that means. So if you're browsing a website, you probably could figure out what that looks like, but it could take a while for you to figure that out. So what if we use full text search? Full text search or like clauses with that phrase is not going to help you against the product description. You're not going to get results in a very nice way. You're going to get like nothing, basically. Even using the free text concept could come back with some results, but those results may not be very good. In fact, you can see in this case, I'm going to come back with multiple languages for an English phrase. Not what I'm looking for. So let's go build a model definition, and I'm going to do it all for free on my laptop. I'm going to install the popular open source model hosting service called Ollama. Ollama comes with a catalog, including an embedding model I can use to generate numbers for my text. So I'm going to first go in and use this new T-SQL syntax to declare this is the location of my Ollama service running on my laptop locally. This is the format, which again, we understand the format or protocol for Ollama. And this is the name of the model. And I'm going to give this model definition a name, my Ollama embedding model. Now I can use this model here, declare a new table with a vector type, a new type that stores these numbers in a join table to join with my other data, go in and do like an insert select statement using a T-SQL statement called AI and generate embeddings with the model definition. For each row, we'll take the description, generate the numbers from the model, all done locally, and store them in the table. Now I can create a vector index on top of that type. So now, by creating the vector index with the data type, I have the ability now to do vector searching on those numbers. So I'll build a stored procedure to do that. I'll take in a prompt, some other criteria. I'll take the prompt, this character data, generate a number for it, and put it into a variable. Now I can do a vector search. And the closest results of numbers are my closest similar results. Incredibly cool and easy. Let's go try it. Let's go try a prompt. Let's see what happens when we go put it together. So use that same phrase, fit it into the procedure, and let's see what kind of results we get. And it's not bad. You kind of look down here and see like, okay, this looks like extreme sports. oh, look at all this products that are in different languages. I didn't expect that. I expected a model to understand English and only give me back results in English or whatever language I'm using. Turns out this embedding model is not optimized for multiple languages. So I need a better way. I'm going to go into Copilot in Management Studio and first ask it, can you just tell me what kind of data I have? And it's going to go in and describe to me, I found an embeddings table, and I'm going to ask it, can you just show me some of the data in here and show me what these numbers look like? Now, the numbers, by the way, don't mean anything to you, but they mean something to AI models because they have semantic meaning to them. And sure enough, in Copilot SSMS, it's showing me that I've got products, but for the same product, I have multiple languages. Now, a different embedding is going to show up for each of these languages, but I want a model to recognize a prompt in English should give me back an optimized results in English. So I'm going to flip over to Azure AI Foundry. All I'm going to do is now go use a model in Azure from the OpenAI called Embed Ada. I'm going to use the same model definition technique for a new model. And once I do that, I've connected this using Azure, I can go regenerate my embeddings with the new model. Same table, generate the embeddings again. I've got new numbers now for my text data, create my index again, go into the procedure and change to use this new model, same code though, and now go try this one and see what I get. And sure enough, I've got a better set of results. It's optimized for English. But I thought to myself, what about a different language? Like, how about Chinese? So I took the prompt, translated it in Chinese, and I run it. And without any code changes, because I'm using a different model, I get the results back in Chinese. This would work in Portuguese as well, because this model understands multiple languages. Pretty amazing what I just went through. I went through the process of defining a model definition locally for free on my laptop, generated embeddings, did a vector search, decided that it wasn't robust enough, picked a model in the cloud, connected with it using the same techniques, and get back a richer result. Turns out embedding models are being improved on every day. So there could be embedding models even on-prem for me I want to use. In fact, I've used one from NVIDIA before that they support in their catalog. Google just announced a new embedding model itself that's open source you can pull down. So you don't necessarily have to use the cloud itself to get a better result, but it's also another tip for you to make sure you're picking a model that kind of meets the needs of your application. So that is the built-in vector story for SQL Server 2025. And it is, part of that story today exists in the cloud with Azure SQL and SQL Database and Fabric. And soon, before the end of this year, you'll see all of this all come together in ground to cloud to fabric to be this way. So pretty cool story in AI. That's our area of innovation. I don't know, you may be too young to remember this, but in the early 2000s, Steve Ballmer got on stage at a conference and started screaming, developers, developers, developers. He was, getting crazy on there. It's a fun video you can go watch. And I only put this on here because I think that we've added some of the most innovative technologies for developers in a decade. Let's talk about some of them. So let's look at that center area for innovations because we just talked about AI. So it starts with GraphQL and Data API Builder. That's not specific to SQL 25. If you are interested in using GraphQL to start using your database, go take a look at Data API Builder. Very innovative way for you to save time, money, and bugs on your code by using that technique. But inside the engine, we have these areas of innovation. Number one, we have a new native JSON data type, an index that goes with it, and a class of T-SQL functions, and we'll show you what that looks like. We also have some investments in the T-SQL language, including, thank you, finally, regular expression support inside T-SQL. Then we have something very interesting. For those that use change data capture, we have a new way of capturing changes through a stream, like Kafka, feels like a Kafka scenario, called change event streaming. And then that stored procedure I mentioned to you, which is a huge long name, SP external invoke REST endpoint, that is now available inside SQL Server. It's been in the cloud before. And we've already had developers and MVPs show scenarios where they had REST endpoints on premises. And they've used this technology to integrate their data in an easy way with a REST endpoint versus building an application, getting the data, and then sending the app to send to the REST endpoint. So take a look at that as well. REST endpoint technology built into the engine. In addition, independent of SQL 25, but I thought it's important for you to see, we have a new GitHub Copilot experience for SQL using the MS SQL VS Code extension. We have both ask mode and agent mode. We even have a new MCP, a model context protocol server you can use in agent mode with Visual Studio Code. So lots of great work for us to integrate GitHub Copilot technologies with SQL context. In addition, if you're a Python fan, we have a brand new Python driver for SQL Server you can check out. This is not the PyODBC that's been out there for years. This one is light years ahead of it. So if you're a Python developer, we feel very excited about that. That's in public preview. That driver works with the cloud and with SQL Server. So check that out as well if you love Python. Let's talk about a couple of the features on this screen, though, a little bit here. Well, sorry, before that, I forgot. Oh my gosh, I forgot. This is such a wanted feature. If you are a developer out there today and you use Developer Edition and you're frustrated that you're in production with Standard Edition, but Developer acts like Enterprise, we have a solution for you. Now with SQL 25, we will have two flavors of Developer, one that behaves like Enterprise Edition and one behaves like Standard Edition. So imagine you as a developer using the Developer Standard version, you go test for free and develop for free, but now your app can be tested against the limits and restrictions of Standard. So no longer do you have to eat up a SQL Standard license just to do development and testing. So very excited to see where this lands. The current version of this Developer Standard in preview will behave like SQL 2022 Standard. Once we go GA, it will behave more like SQL 25 Standard. So today, if you're testing out a little bit, when we announce any kind of type things that might happen with additions, that's how it will behave when we go general available. Very excited to see this land. You can try this out today in public preview. But let's talk about JSON. So we started with JSON support in SQL 16. And the way we started that support was through character-based data. So you end varchar column, and you could take JSON documents and put them in SQL Server. And we even had some functions to help you manipulate the JSON. It was fine. It worked great. But here's the problem. It takes up a lot of space, and it's not native JSON, right? It's just still character data. Great news. We have a new data type using binary compressed storage up to 2 gig per JSON document, because using blob storage. And I've seen developers save as much as 60 to 70% savings on storage of JSON now. Do this because we have this binary type. And you want to search for these large documents, so we have a JSON index on top of that. In addition, we've provided some actual interesting T-SQL functions and operators to be more native to support a native JSON document. It is my opinion that SQL Server now is up to speed with other database vendors out there that support JSON natively. So very excited to see the feedback. So far, our developers have seen it, have loved it a lot. So let's go see a demonstration of what this looks like. So our need is we have JSON data as part of our application. We don't want to buy a separate database for NoSQL. Can't we bring some of the NoSQL technology into SQL Server because you already have a license for it? So let's see what's possible. So here's my demonstration. I got a database called orders and a table called orders with an ID column and the new JSON type. So all the order details are in the JSON document. So what I want to do is just insert these directly into SQL Server. Now, this is going to look a lot like before SQL Server, but in this example, we're doing validation of valid JSON in this insert statement, whereas we didn't do that before. In addition, I can easily go find a JSON value by using the JSON value function and picking like a field in the JSON document to bring back this as a result set, which is very, very nice. Now, maybe I just want to dump out each row as a JSON document. I can do that. They come back, it looks like a JSON document. But maybe you'd like to combine everything to a single JSON document. So the array ag function can take every row in the table as JSON and put it as a big single JSON document for you to consume in your application. Now, key value pairs is another common pattern we see for developers with JSON. So I can take the integer ID and the JSON and come back with, for each row, a JSON document that looks like a key value pair, the order ID being the key and the value being the order info column. And this last feature is what I love. Because it's a native JSON type, we can modify the JSON value in line without converting text. So I can say, hey, let me go modify quantity, which is a JSON value inside my document. So here's the quantity before. Let me go modify the quantity for order ID 1 directly to 2. And I'm modifying the native binary in there, and we're doing it directly for you. That is huge. Before you have to go pull it out, convert it, convert some number, and put it back in the database. So that is the ability to do a basic JSON native data type. We also have, if you go back and pull the deck, you can take a look as well and see demonstrations of using JSON indexing, where you can go and take a JSON column, put an index on it, and use searching. So if you're going to have a large number of JSON docs, you want to search an index, we now have a native JSON index on top of that. And you can see that if you go pull the deck down and go look at the demonstration yourself. Lots of stuff already, right? Look at what I've done. I've already talked about AI built in. I've got some developer features. We're not done. We've made some investments in the T-SQL language. So everything you see on the screen right here is based on a customer request, something us trying to match what we see going on in the industry, or an ANSI standard update. The first top left one, regular expression support. If you're not familiar with regular expressions, consider what you have today with like clauses. What do you have? You have an underscore and a percent, pretty much, right? You don't have much in terms of pattern matching. Now with regular expressions, you get the full power of the POSIX regular expression syntax. And if you've never played with this before, Copilot can be your friend as an AI agent to help you go build these patterns. But it's not just doing regular expressions searching for like clauses. It's actually a series of functions that can replace what it took you to do 2 or 3 functions before. It could be splitting a table, concatenating, string searching, etc. So a whole litany of regex functions all built into the T-SQL language. It's literally like its own engine to help you do things like pattern matching inside your application, and a bunch of other type of investments in the T-SQL language you can take a look at. Okay, so today we offer the ability for you as a developer or administrator to capture changes from the SQL transaction log in a couple of different ways. One of them is transactional replication. People have been doing that for years. And the consumption of that is through a subscriber, where you would just run queries against tables to go see the data. Another one of those is change data capture, where you would enable change data capture on a database. You then, as a developer, would go write queries to go query the changes from system tables, consume those in your application, and then process those and do what you want with them. You may have heard of the concept called Kafka, which is an event streaming technology. So what we've done now is provide something called change event streaming. In change event streaming, and we'll talk about how it works in a second, we're going to allow you now to pull changes, or excuse me, we're going to push changes from the transaction log in a streaming format to Azure Event Hub. This is going to light up all sorts of options for you, things like real-time processing, event applications, even AI agent scenarios, which I have a demonstration to show you in a second, or a visual to show you a possibility in a second how that works, or even auditing. So think of scenarios where you need real-time changes from the log pushed to some sort of event processing system. And we're going to light that up now in SQL Server 2025. So what we did is we built this table for you. These are 3 ways today that you can consume changes from SQL Server from the transaction log. Change tracking has been for a very long period of time. Not popular today because it's synchronous. It's part of a transaction. The middle, CDC, is the most popular way, but here's a couple of thoughts for you. Number 1, it requires SQL Server agent jobs to make it possible. Number 2, and its biggest limitation is the overhead. Anytime we consume changes from the log with these agent jobs, we write them into system tables. And anytime we have to write into a system table, that's extra transaction logging, and then you have to read from them. So there's a lot of extra I/O involved here, right? It is near real time, and it's very, very popular. Change event streaming is going to be committed transactions done in an async fashion, just like CDC, but does not require agent jobs. It's all built into the engine. Background tasks make this happen. And we will push these changes to an event stream, so it's I/O-less. So it's a much, much cleaner system for you to try out to use than using CDC. It removes all the overhead you've seen before. So let's look at an example. I'm not going to go through all the code for change event streaming. I want to show you a visualization and talk about how a possibility for you. The demo, though, to go click through the demo and see the videos, is all available to you in the deck itself. So let's say Contoso needs help with shipping problems for something like this. They've got an order system where they work with suppliers that do shipping for them. They're shipping providers. So when an order comes into their site, like say a website, they use logic in their database to contact the shipping provider and get an estimated ship date. Well, unfortunately, a lot of times these ship dates are way out from the date that the customer ordered it, and there's a lot of frustration for the customer. So what they decided to do is use change event streaming with AI agents to help solve this problem. So imagine this scenario. The orders come in with this new estimated ship date. Any order that comes in, the system will use change event streaming to push it to an Azure Event Hub. You as a programmer will write something called an Azure function. If you've not seen this before, it's not that complex to write. It's available in different languages. It's all serverless in the cloud. You will sit there and run this function all the time. It'll just look for things on the Event Hub. It listens to events from the Event Hub. And in this event can be in there orders and customer information. So the function can take a look at this information and say, I recognize a shipping delay. Let's say it's some number you pick. It's over 30 days, over 60 days. You take that logic and say, if there's an order that has a shipping date that's considered a delay, I'm going to send this request along with data about the customer to an AI agent in Azure AI Foundry. This agent is specifically designed to help with shipping problems. And its design is to come up with recommendations by contacting shipping providers asynchronously to try to resolve these asynchronous from you all the time behind the scenes. And what it can do is you can train it to say, hey, when you go contact this information, use an AI model to make recommendations, and if possible, work with the shipping provider to solve the problem and contact the customer. Imagine a customer getting an order back with a shipping, and then like an hour later saying, hey, by the way, we've resolved your shipping delay. We're now going to have a new date for you. And all this is done behind the scenes, and all because change event streaming made that happen. Now, a couple comments about change event streaming. Number one, it requires the preview feature, so it's in preview mode today for you to use as a developer. We encourage you to use Azure Event Hub to get started, but we're just on this journey. So for example, it's our intention to support other types of receivers for events. Now, if you're a Kafka developer, Azure Event Hub has a Kafka compatibility endpoint. You could use that today, but imagine a world where maybe we've set this up so Kafka on premises could be a way to go use change event streaming. So very excited to see this feature land. Think back a second for the developer features I told you. JSON support, regular expressions, change event streaming, REST APIs, using Data API Builder, a lot to pack in there. Again, to me, the most significant release we've done for developers in a decade. Let me mention a little bit about fabric mirroring. That's part of our area of innovation. Remember our screen here, innovation. And then we want to finish off talking about the engine. So today, people are using the Microsoft Fabric as a unified data platform for everything. And we want you to be able to participate in this with SQL. So what we've done is built a concept called mirroring. The idea is this. We'll take that same change event streaming technology that we showed you before, and we're going to automatically use that if you enable mirroring, and we're going to push changes into OneLake in Fabric. You then as a developer or as a data scientist or an analyst or Power BI user can use the changes in OneLake based on Delta Parquet format to do whatever you want. Join it with other types of data sources, do analytics, data science, Power BI, whatever you want to do. Because the fact I've got it in OneLake for you now, you have all sorts of amazing opportunities for you. Now look at this diagram right here. You see the database's purple icon, that's SQL database in Fabric. Any data in SQL database in Fabric is already automatically mirrored in OneLake. But now across the board, you can set up SQL 25, SQL 16 through 2022, Azure SQL Database, or Managed Instance. Any of those can all be mirrored inside OneLake today. In fact, I've done demonstrations where I have taken all of this, put it in OneLake, built a lake house, and now I have one lake that represents all of these across all these sources. And I can join across this and do Power BI on top of them. So Fabric mirroring is out there today. Azure Database is generally available. Managed Instance in public preview. SQL 16 through 2022 is in public preview. And of course, SQL 25 mirroring is part of SQL 25 public preview, is in preview today. If you're wondering about cost, by the way, the OneLake mirrored storage is free. 1 terabyte per Fabric capacity unit you get. So if you got an F64 capacity unit, you get 64 terabytes of free mirrored storage. So check it out. Very popular. I'm actually going to the Fabric Community Conference in Europe next week in Vienna, Austria. And I promise you, everybody's going to ask me about Fabric mirroring. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about the core engine and make sure we have some time to address some of your questions that Carol is going to actively select for you. I call the engine the meat and potatoes of SQL Server. That's a phrase in Texas we use for just something, a core thing, because we eat a lot of meat and potatoes. So just the core thing about the engine is security, performance, and availability. And those features at the top are not going to help you a lot if we don't innovate in the middle there. So let's talk about that a little bit. Look at this slide. We have over 40 new features across security, performance, and availability. Now, you may be looking at this list and go, okay, well, that's pretty interesting. I don't see one that just really stands out for me. So let me kind of pick and choose a few of those and talk about them and see what you think about it. So, number one, security. We now have had Entra security since SQL 2022 using Azure Arc. But all we offered there was inbound logins for Entra, and it required a service principal. Now you can do a system assigned managed identity for the virtual machine or the computer with Arc. You can do logins, but now you can do outbound security. So backup to Azure storage. The model definition I showed you, the create external model for Azure AI Foundry, that can be backed up, that can be authenticated with managed identity instead of an API key. So, and there's other scenarios as well. So you being able to secure without a password, your ability to go in and out of SQL Server is a big deal. So if you're not taking a look at Entra, it does require Azure Arc, but we kind of think it's the future of using security with SQL Server, even on premises. We're trying to match what we have in the cloud and use Arc as a mechanism to do that. And then if I had to think about performance and availability, let's talk about a couple of these and then unpack one specific one called optimized locking. So it's my contention or belief that a lot of times performance has to do with concurrency, not necessarily how fast a query can run, but how concurrent the application is. So optimized locking is a new way to give you better locking in SQL Server without you having to change your code. Abort query hint is hilarious. Imagine a scenario where you, as a developer or administrator, want to take some rogue user, use a query store hint, and make sure the next time they run it, it just fails, it aborts. And so that's a new query hint that you can use. We built that because customers have these scenarios where they just have rogue users that they have a hard time controlling, and they want to make sure that they find a way to temporarily solve any server problems. So you can put a query store hint to do that. The next one is really cool. Now using Resource Governor, you can control temp DB space usage for a workload group. So you can ring fence a set of users that maybe they're running queries where temp DB goes out of control. You can set them up in a resource workload group, and you can control the amount of temp DB space they can use. That applies to temporary tables. It applies to sort spills, temp DB spills. Anything using temp DB applies to resource governance. Really excited to see that land for SQL 25. In the performance area, we have enhancements for our intelligent query processing suite, things like CE feedback, improvements for column store index maintenance, and query store on read replicas was a feature we added in SQL 2022, but it required a trace flag. So now we've taken that away in SQL 25. So query store can now be run on read replicas, so you can gain access to the performance of queries specifically only running on read replicas. If you look at the right-hand side over here for availability, high availability and disaster recovery, we have a rich set of enhancements for always-on availability groups. We took a look at the top list of customer problems over the last several years and fixed everything basically, enhanced actually availability groups. So take a look at that. More reliable failover, some better tuning and diagnostics. And we have some enhancements for backups. We have a new compression algorithm that you can use for backups. We have the ability to run backups on secondary replicas, all backup types, and even the ability to do backups on immutable Azure storage. But let's, for a second, take a look specifically at optimized locking. So here's the scenario. You're a developer, you write code, you don't have to worry about locking. Like, I'm tired of worrying about lock escalation or how lock internals work. I just want my application to run more concurrent. I understand I have to write better queries and tune my queries, but sometimes I tune queries or do things that aren't bad, but it ends up coming in some sort of lock situation I can't control. Let's look at an example. So here, I'm going to update AdventureWorks, and my goal is to update a large set of rows because it makes sense based on something I'm doing. Like I'm setting a certain sales ID number here, or a certain freight number of value, right? And if I run 2,500 rows to update this freight value, I get 2,500 locks. So that's not bad, but as you may have seen before in your application, if you update this to like 10,000 rows, all of a sudden the locking behavior gets kind of ugly. And here's what I mean by that. I'm going to run 10,000 row updates. I'm going to go look at locks. I don't see 10,000 locks in this case now. I see one, but guess what? It's an exclusive table lock. That's called lock escalation. That's frustrating because all I want to do is update the maximum value at this point, the max row. I updated 10,000 rows over here. update the macro over here in a table, and I'm blocked when I shouldn't be blocked. They have nothing to do with each other, but because of lock escalation, they are. So how do we fix that? We can turn this option called optimize locking. You turn this on as an option for your database. It's on by default in the cloud already today. And now go run the same scenario. Update 10,000 rows. I'll go run that. And now when you go look at locks, you have something called a transaction lock. This is using the row versioning concept of accelerated database recovery. Because what we're going to do is lock the transaction now. Anybody that needs to look at the transaction could get blocked, but anybody not associated with that transaction, like this update here, will not be blocked at all because it has a different transaction lock. So now I'm totally lock escalation free using this technology. Now, another scenario is this. Even with this transaction concept, I might have a scenario where in order to go find a row to update to get the transaction lock, I have to obtain locks on other rows. We call that lock before qualification. Now, I'll show you what that looks like by turning off read snapshot isolation. If I turn off that option, but I still have optimized locking, I'm going to update 2 different rows in 2 different parts of the database, but kind of close to each other in the table. And because of the fact that this update has to go obtain locks before it updates the row, and it's holding a transaction open, the next update runs, and it happens to be one of those locks that this needed. So all of a sudden now I got a blocking problem, even if I'm using optimized locking. So what we've done now is if you're using read committed snapshot on, in other words, versioning of snapshots, isolation level snapshots, we can do the lock after the qualification because we're using read committed snapshot isolation. So we can turn around and do something like this. We can turn on read committed snapshot on, and you can run the same set of updates now. The actual locks that are going to be acquired or happen after we find our row. That's called lock after qualification. So each of these updates now are isolated from each other, and that's because we're using a different isolation level than we did before. So combined together, I can turn on accelerated database recovery, I can turn on optimized locking and read committed snapshot, and I'm almost lock free at this point. Like I'm really in a scenario now where locks don't affect my application. There is kind of overhead with using versioning in some cases, and that's something you're going to take a look at. But if you can go through the process of determining that works for me, it's on by default, in Azure, this could be a great option for you to optimize your application. So crazy. I showed you AI built in, new developer technology, fabric mirroring, security, optimized locking, availability group enhancements. So where you see me on camera right now, I'm in my home in North Richland Hills, Texas, and about pretty close to my house is a big, nice park. And often what I'll do is during the end of the day or maybe a break for lunch, I will go walk around this park. And this is my time when I think of new ideas for SQL Server. I know it sounds kind of crazy. Most people walk to exercise. Here I'm thinking about new ideas for SQL. One day this spring, I was walking around the park and I thought to myself, of all the stuff we're putting in this release, we've built a new platform. So consider this. You have all these features in the engine you could use. If you're doing availability group, we have brand new features for your replica. Let's add on to this basic story. What if you wanted to use vector searching? You can now do vector searching through models locally or models in the cloud. You can even add REST APIs inside your database to talk to new REST services. You could potentially use Entra to do managed identity authentication, and you could even mirror your data into Fabric. You can mirror your data in Fabric and use change event streaming. So you can set up a change event streaming program. You can mirror data in Fabric over here. And in addition, you could use Data API Builder for new apps. You could build new AI agents with semantic kernel on top of the data. You could use the new SSMS, I need to update for 2022, with Copilot to help you manage the server, or use Visual Studio Code for GitHub Copilot for development with a new local dev container. It looks crazy, but I was walking around the park one day and I dreamed this in my mind that we have an architecture that's brand new. Like if you move to SQL 25, you have something that is not even possible before. You can pick and choose whatever you want from this list. But to me, it represents kind of like respecting the tradition of SQL Server that we've done for many, many decades with providing new innovations that were not possible before. So this is the story of SQL 2025. Areas of innovation, AI built in, new developers, fabric mirroring, core engine, and in a new architecture with a brand new shiny icon in the middle if you haven't seen it already. Here's some customers that have told us already they're using it during the preview period, both for AI technologies, for fabric mirroring, and even things that are related to the engine itself. I have a ton of resources for you. I'm going to leave this up here as we take questions as we're going to end today. Notice here the SQL 25 decks. That's where this deck is. So if you get this deck and download it, you can go look at this slide here and get all the other resources. We have blogs, we have demos, we have videos, we have examples. We have new Copilot tools for you to use. We have so many different ways for you to learn about the new release, and we're not done. We have other resources we're building as we march towards general availability. So Carol, I'm not even sure I can speak faster or pour more information into your audience on SQL 25 or show more energy, but I tried to bring that to you today. So we have about 9 minutes left in the hour that you had allotted me. I don't know if you want to kind of highlight some of the questions that came up, or maybe some ones that are important to you that I should address. Hey, Carol. I think she's coming back online. Well, I'm going to go look through these comments right here that I see. I see some comments right here. And if they're in Portuguese, I apologize. If they're English, I'll try to respond to them. Let's see. Okay. Native connection with Azure AI Foundry was a question. Yes, we do through REST. When you set up it as a model, we have that. Any chance for using HTTP, Rodrigo? No. We're very, very passionate about this. We want to make sure HTTPS is required for encryption. Thank you for bringing that up. But as you may have seen, you can set up a proxy. So if you have a HTTP endpoint that doesn't support encryption, you can set a proxy server. But we're kind of passionate about keeping that as an encrypted endpoint. So I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Do keep in mind, Rodrigo, though, that if you use local Onyx models, which we just announced with RC0, that doesn't use REST. So that's like a local file system that you would use locally in your system. So that could be an alternative if you can't use HTTPS. And I don't see any other questions. Carol, just want to check and see if you're still there. If anybody wants to put another question in the chat, I'm happy to look at it here and address it here as we wrap up today. Well, thank you so much for the great comments on the call. I really appreciate your time today. Look forward and follow me on LinkedIn, on other social media platforms as well. I often post what's going on with SQL Server and with other technology, ground to cloud to fabric. You probably see me in public. I'm going to be at the Fabric European Conference in Vienna, Austria next week. So there'll probably be some other postings and announcements we're making there at that conference. And I look forward to you following me and us discussing and you seeing what's going on with SQL Server as we move toward general availability towards the end of this year. Carol, thanks so much for having me on today.